video, but we do have some news to get into today. Let's get into it. So I believe the top story, and I think it's something that we have been talking about for a long time. And that's Speedball Mike Bailey he's out. He has left TNA. Everybody for a long time thought that his contract expired on December 1st. And looks like his contract had expired on November 1st, and he is no longer with the company. His profile has been removed from the roster page, and he looks like he is AEW bound. That's according to Sean Ross Sapp. Now, a lot of people were confused by that because it looks like he had just started a feud with Trent Seven, and I figured we would at least get the match between Trent and Speedball. They started Impact on Thursday night. Sorry, they started Impact on Thursday night, recapping Trent turning on Speedball, and then there was no follow up. Speedball or Trent Seven has completely moved on. He started a new feud already, so I don't think we're getting that match. Now, Speedball's all over WrestleCade, so I was like, maybe we'll get the match at Turning Point, and I guess that's still possible, because Speedball has like 3 matches during Turning Point weekend, and that's pretty typical. Or not Turning Point, WrestleCade weekend, and that's pretty typical. So I figured like they could squeeze him in on Turning Point, and then they can have Trent Seven beat him. But it looks like now, I don't know if he signed the contract. I don't know if he signed a contract with AEW, but if he's with AEW, he's gone. And that was part of the story that I thought was interesting, is that Sean Ross Sapp said that if he had signed with NXT, he would still be able to like finish up with TNA. But it looks like he signed with AEW, so he is not even going to finish up with TNA. Like, he's just done. He's not going to finish up that feud. They're completely moving on. That's a bit disappointing that would happen, but that's the pro wrestling business. And TNA and AEW are no longer simpatico like they once were. That relationship went astray, and TNA has entered a relationship with WWE. Although at the TNA tapings, conspicuous by their absence was any semblance of NXT talent. There were none at the tapings. I happen to be okay with that because I don't really think that they're adding a ton to the show. They certainly aren't drawing any tickets. And now, while Wendy Chu was fun to have around and Charlie Dempsey was fun to have around, ultimately TNA needs to focus on their own people. And I think we saw that. They actually brought back some people that we hadn't been seeing in a while because they were so focused on putting NXT stars on their show. So we actually got to see, like, Alan Angels is back. I thought that guy was leaving. I thought he was done because we just hadn't seen him in forever. Same with Trent Seven. I thought he wasn't coming. Like, people are leaving, and I was like, oh, maybe Trent Seven's like one of those guys. Like, I had speculated that here, but looks like he's sticking around. Same with Alan Angels, and then they brought back Jake Christ, which I think is cool, and I dig the tag team of Alan Angels and Jake Christ, and I'll get into that later. But apparently that relationship is still going on. It's still strong. Jordan Grace was just on NXT, so I don't think there's anything happened there, but there were no NXT talent at the latest set of TV tapings. But yeah, so I'm not saying it's I'm not saying it's completely like off the table that Speedball could wrestle at Turning Point. He was on the poster for Turning Point. He, at one point, they had at least there had to have been some type of agreement in place that he would finish up at Turning Point. But he's wrestling all over WrestleCade, and as of right now, he is not booked for Turning Point because I think he's going to. Well, no, I don't think he's going. He is definitely going to AEW. I don't know when he starts there, but he, as of right now, is not booked, and I don't know that he's going to be booked. But if they do, they should really book the Trent Seven match, and then have Trent beat him, and then call and say goodbye to Speedball. But if that's the way he goes out, just being attacked and. It wasn't a stretcher job. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a low blow and some punches. Like, it wasn't like a devastating way to write somebody off. They didn't kill the guy. They wrote him off seemingly thinking that they would have another match with him. And so if we don't get that match, that's pretty disappointing. And TNA needs to do better, right? They need to know and understand what's actually happening with the talent in their company. And if they don't know that he's not coming back, that's on them. They gotta have those conversations. Now, if he said, I'm 100% wrestling at Turning Point, and then did the angle and never had any intention, which I don't think he's that type of guy. He's not like an Alberto type of guy. Um, I just don't see that happening. And so we'll see. Maybe they just didn't know that he wouldn't be coming back. And I mean, I think that's a real possibility. But that sucks. I really enjoyed Speedball's run. I've been very critical of Speedball in the past. Because he's just not a good television character. Like there's not really anything interesting about him. Like what is a Speedball and why is Speedball? Like what is his why? We never really got to the bottom of that. And I don't know that we'll get to the bottom of that either in AEW, because I just don't think that they're very good at building up these characters either. He is a difficult character to build up. There's no two ways about it. He's very good in the ring. He has the good matches. They have 100 guys that have those matches in that company. I don't think he's going to get co-main event slots on pay-per-view like he did with TNA. So I think TNA booked him better than anybody else is ever going to book him. Now, if they focus him in on Ring of Honor, he could probably, be the Ring of Honor like television champion and probably win the tag titles. I don't know that they'll put the Ring of Honor world belt on him. But I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. So if they have him focused in on Ring of Honor, he could probably get a really good push. But it's their developmental system. It's Ring of Honor. Right. Ring of Honor died and they just been kind of breathing a little bit of life into it. But I don't know anybody that actually cares about Ring of Honor anymore. There's some hardcore AEW fans that just kind of watch out of loyalty to AEW, but I don't really think like old school Ring of Honor fans are still keeping up with it. But I think it's a real possibility that if Ring of Honor gets a deal on True TV, which I don't know what the status of that is, that if they get a deal there, we could see Ring of Honor going head to head up against TNA and Speedball being one of the faces of Ring of Honor. I think that's a real possibility. But I really enjoyed his run. He was very like, as far as like matches of the last 3 years, you probably talk about, if you counted down the top 10, Speedball was probably in about 40% of the top 10 matches of the last 3 years. He was always in like he either had the match of the year in the year that he was there, or he was in the conversation for match of the year, and he had multiples of those. But one of my favorite, probably my favorite Speedball memory. Now, I think his best match was with Ospreay at Bound for Glory. I just thought that match was tremendous. But my favorite memory of him is where I really like, okay, the switch just flipped for Speedball, was the no ropes kind of blood sport style match that he had with Kenny King in Atlanta on Impact. And I thought that they just tore the house down. And that was the first time I was like, oh, wow, Speedball is interesting. And I thought Kenny King, to his credit, brought the best out of Speedball, because that was the first time I was like, oh, Speedball can be mad at somebody. Right. Because before he's just like, I'm just in it for the competition. Like that was kind of his guy, like his gimmick. It was so lame. But I thought that Kenny King really got under his skin and did a good job. And we actually got to see a little bit of Speedball's character. And he was like pissed. And so they did the no ropes thing. And that was one of my favorite Impact matches ever. Like it was just so good. And I went into it not thinking it was going to be any good. I thought it was going to be crap. I was a fan of Speedball, but it's like those no ropes gimmick matches typically don't work, but this one worked. It was really freaking good. And it wasn't like a typical blood sport, where blood sport is like, can be good, but the matches are usually short and it's fake MMA. But they actually turned it into a pro wrestling match. And I thought they did a hell of a job. Another one of my favorite memories was, and I think this might have also been in Atlanta, Lucha Doncic. Lucha Doncic can correct me. He was there for the Fight Pit match, and it was sick. But I want to say it was Against All Odds 2023, and it was Speedball versus Trey Miguel, which I just thought was a tremendous match. I think it was Against All Odds in 2023. Somebody can correct me on that. Hold on, swig of coffee. That was another amazing match. His one of his recent matches with Zachary Wentz, I thought was fantastic, and I think Io corrected me. It was Against All Odds 2022. Thank you, Io. Um, Zachary Wentz that he had just had recently was fantastic. Um, you know what? I think the Iron Man match, not Iron Man, a 60-minute match he had with Josh Alexander, I felt was a bit overrated. Just because I don't think the crowd was all that into it. What they did in the ring was very good. But I just didn't really feel like they had the crowd. And it went on forever. And I'm a fan of 60-minute matches, and I don't think that the match was bad. I'm not saying that. I actually enjoyed the match, but I don't think it was as good as other people thought. I think once they cross that threshold of 60 minutes, I feel like people tend to overrate those matches. It's like, you guys probably could have done this in 45, and it might have been better. But I did like the match. It was very good. But he has had tons of great matches. Mustafa Ali, obviously at Slammiversary this year. Vikingo at Bound for Glory, very good. And then, of course, he ended on a high note. That match with Moose, I thought was tremendous. Everybody I've talked to about it, like, really, really liked it. There's only one guy out there that I know that didn't like it, but he's kind of and when it comes to TNA, if there's any type of outside interference, he's just not into it. and he's also not a fan of Moose. He hates Moose. So so I don't really take his opinion. Like, I don't really value it. So but for the most part, everybody really liked that match. And Lucha says, wasn't that match 60-minute match in the crowd? Hell known as Louisville. Yeah, I don't remember, but I remember, like, there was supposed to be some other people on that show, and I think some people just couldn't make it, and so they missed some matches. And I think they just said, all right, Josh Speedball, head out there and go kill some time, do 60 minutes. And they did, and they did a great job. But in front of that crowd, that's a difficult task to do. And for the most part, they pulled it off, but I think people overrated the match because it went 60 minutes. It was, yeah, I felt like it could have been like 20 minutes shorter. And it would have been better, but that's